Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning. And welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is the T word: tariffs, 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 and tariffs. And how Donald J. Trump's USA tariffs have also upended the World Economic Order and the World Trade Order. But now, fellows, the question is now who caused them? Now, who caused them? But before I dive into this subject today, I came across an old video of Donald Trump on the Oprah Winfrey show in the 80s. I mean, talk about 30, 40 years ago, talking about what he would do with regards to America being ripped off by all countries around the world and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and hear what Donald Trump had to say then. And I also play a clip of the 1992 debate between Ross Perot, George H. Bush, and Bill Clinton, which also had the issue of NAFTA and American businesses moving overseas, outsourcing and all that stuff. But let's go ahead and hear what Donald Trump had to say on this Oprah Winfrey show. I mean, he has a lot of stuff he talked about back then with regards to what do you call it? All these what do you call it? All these um all these countries ripping America off. So let's go ahead and hear what Donald Trump has to say about this, and then I'll come back and dissect.
You took out a full-page ad in major U.S. newspapers last year criticizing U.S. foreign policy. What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily. I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Open. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not. But I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, but I just probably wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't. But I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country. How we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
What do you think of this year's presidential race, the way it's shaping up?
Well, it's going to be very interesting. I think that probably George Bush has an advantage in terms of the election. I think that probably people would say that he's got like that little edge in terms of the incumbency, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Jesse Jackson's done himself very proud. I think Michael Dukakis has done one hell of a job. And George Bush has done a hell of a job. They all went in there sort of as semi-underdogs, including George Bush, and they've all come out. I think people that are around all three of those candidates can be very proud of the jobs they've done.
You said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone in to lose in my life. And if I did decide to do it, I think I'd be inclined. I would say that I would have a hell of a chance of winning because I think people, I don't know how your audience feels, but I think people are tired of seeing the United States ripped off. And I can't promise you everything, but I can tell you one thing. This country would make one hell of a lot of money from those people that for 25 years have taken advantage. It wouldn't be the way it's been, believe me.
All right, fellas. So you heard Donald Trump there talking about how America is being ripped off by all other countries around the world. At that time, he was talking mainly about Japan, because Japan had a huge trade deficit in the 80s and the early 90s with the United States of America. It wasn't China back then because China wasn't even nowhere near in terms of world economy. So he was mainly talking about Japan and the European Union and so on and so forth. But I also want you guys to hear another audio of Ross Perot in a debate with Bill Clinton and George H. Bush, also talking about this same issue, pretty much about NAFTA, that had already been initiated by Ronald Reagan, went into George Bush, H. Bush administration, but they couldn't pass that bill until Bill Clinton came into office in 1993. And then Clinton signed it into law. So let's go ahead and hear what Ross Perot also had to say with regards to this issue. And I'll come back and I've dissect this whole issue about the Trump tariffs and everything that's going on right now. So let's hear what
outsourcing will do to the American economy. What will you do as president to open foreign markets to fair competition from American business and to stop unfair competition here at home from foreign countries so that we can bring jobs back to the United States?
That's right at the top of my agenda. We've shipped millions of jobs overseas, and we have a strange situation because we have a process in Washington where after you've served for a while, you cash in, become a foreign lobbyist, make $30,000 a month, then take a leave, work on presidential campaigns, make sure you got good contacts, and then go back out. And if you just want to get out of brass tacks, first thing you ought to do is get all these folks that have got these one-way trade agreements that we've negotiated over the years, and say, fellas, we'll take the same deal we gave you. And they'll gridlock right at that point because, for example, we've got international competitors who simply could not unload their cars off the ships if they had to comply. You see, if it was a two-way street, just couldn't do it. We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, let's assume you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element of making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement. If you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south. So if people send me to Washington, the first thing I'll do is study that 2,000-page agreement and make sure it's a two-way street. One last point here. I decided I was dumb and didn't understand it, so I called the who's who of the folks who've been around it. And I said, why won't everybody go south? They said, we'll be disruptive. I said, for how long? I finally got them up for 12 to 15 years. And I said, well, how does it stop being disruptive? And that is when their jobs come up from $1 an hour to $6 an hour and ours go down to $6 an hour, then it's leveled again. But in the meantime, you've wrecked the country with these kinds of deals.
All right, fellas. So you also heard Ross Perot in the debate in 1992 with Bill Clinton and George H. Bush had to talk about how American companies moving south of the border to Mexico, establishing factories down there, was also going to rip Americans off, workers off. So this issue that Donald Trump is talking about right now goes back about 50 years. And this has been the debate in the US since the 80s, especially when Ronald Reagan started advocating this, global world economy and so on and so forth. And it is out of Ronald Reagan's initiative of NAFTA. But he couldn't get it done. So he went on all the way to George H. Bush. And then Bill Clinton came into office. That's when they got it passed. But fellas, guess what? Who do you think helped Bill Clinton to pass that NAFTA deal? It was the Republicans. It was the Republicans, about 170 or something Republicans with about 60 or 70 Democrats that basically passed that NAFTA deal. So there were a lot of Democrats who were against the NAFTA deal because they knew what NAFTA was going to do to American workers. Because the unions were against it. And Ralph Nader and so on and so forth, they were all staunchly against it. But the Republicans who always believe in free trade, who always believe in corporate America, moving jobs outside so they can make more money with cheap labor, helped Bill Clinton. And in the end, Bill Clinton was able to sign NAFTA into law when he came to office. So the problem is not Donald Trump. Donald Trump, what Donald Trump is doing right now should have been done about 30, 40 years ago. First of all, NAFTA should never have happened in the first place. NAFTA should never have happened in the first place, but it happened. Because they thought at that time that by setting shops in Mexico or Canada, and eventually they moved from there to China, being cheap labor, that is going to help American companies, as these economies, especially with Mexico, also building up Mexican economy. Eventually, Mexicans will raise their standard of living, so they will be able to afford to buy American goods that will be exported to Mexico and Canada and so on and so forth. That was the main argument of NAFTA, that as Mexico and Canada all get their economies moving up, their citizens will have a better standard of living, so they will be able to buy American products. That means American products that will be exported to these countries will now be able to be bought by these Mexican citizens. But guess what happened, fellows? When NAFTA was passed, and these companies realized that, like he said, Ross Perot said, you're talking about they were paying like $1 or something like that an hour for labor down there. There's no way they will even think about coming to America. So all these companies, Ford, General Motors, and all these Whirlpool, Frigidaire, all these appliances companies also decided to set shop in Mexico and build their factories in Mexico and then build these products down there and then ship them back to the United States and sell it to American consumers. So the question now is, who caused them? What Donald Trump is doing should have been done a long time ago. But no president had the balls to do what Donald Trump is doing. And they couldn't do it. You see, because the reason why they couldn't do it is because the only president had done something drastically that has pretty much upended the American economic system was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he went head to head against the robber barons, especially John D. Rockefeller, when he broke up Standard Oil. And what did these robber barons do to FDR? They pretty much tried to collapse the economy at that time. That's what they did. Because at that time, you had most of these robber barons, about 1 in 3 American workers worked for these robber barons. So they were very powerful at that time. And when they realized that FDR was coming after them, what did they do? They did everything possible to collapse the American economy. But they were trying to teach Rockefeller, FDR a lesson. But eventually, when FDR was able to implement those policies, breaking up the monopolies that had existed for hundreds of years by these companies and these robber baron executives, what happened? It opened up American economy in the 50s, 60s, and then that created the wealth and the boom of American economy. So looking at what is happening right now with what is going on with Donald Trump, you can see clearly also, you have these executives, Wall Street executives, who are staunchly against what is going on with Donald Trump. You hear a lot of these Democrats. You hear Bernie Sanders, you hear Elizabeth Warren, you hear all these left-leaning Democrats who once were calling for tariffs on China. We're calling for tariffs. Now, all of a sudden, are against tariffs. Just a couple of years ago, before Donald Trump, you had Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer calling for tariffs. And fellows, even when Donald Trump imposed those steel tariffs on China in his first term, why didn't Biden take those tariffs off? Joseph Biden didn't take those tariffs off. He left them in place because the tariffs worked. That's why Biden didn't touch it. He left it. And when you hear these economists and these former Treasury secretaries and Commerce secretaries come on these news network, CNN, MSNBC, and so on, talking about how Donald Trump is destroying America's economy and Donald Trump is creating a lot of chaos and all that. Now look, Donald Trump thrives in chaos. That's how Donald Trump operates. He's doing what they call in sports, in American sports, flooding the zone. He's flooding the whole system with different things. So he got the Democrats all over the place confused. And exactly what Donald Trump is doing is what needs to be done for him to be able to achieve what he wants to do. I get it. People say that, oh, I mean, what he is doing right now, basically, most Democrats are now saying, oh, we agree with him on tariffs, but we don't like the way Donald Trump is doing. The main argument right now about Donald Trump's tariffs is mainly about the way he's doing it. But fellows, let's be real here. Like Ross Perot said in that debate, you have these people who serve in Congress and when they leave Congress become lobbyists. And all these people saying that Donald Trump should go to Congress and let the Congress work out these deals so that the Congress will help him with these tariffs and so on and so on. Fellows, let's be real. Guess what? There's no way these special interest lobbyists who contribute massively to both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are going to allow these tariffs on their companies that they lobby for. It ain't going to happen. I mean, if you people think that somehow if Donald Trump had gone to the Congress and put this deal on the table, the Congress would have passed a law that he could have implemented these tariffs in a very, normal way and so on and so forth, it wasn't going to happen. Because these lobbyists who contribute to these political parties are going to make sure that these congressmen and these senators are never going to vote for this any tariff bill on their companies. It wasn't going to happen. But the only person who had the balls to do this is Donald J. Trump. And that is why he's doing it. And I applaud Donald Trump for doing it. Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with Donald Trump or not, let's be objective about what Donald Trump is trying to do. He might be right, he might be wrong. But in my personal opinion, I think Donald Trump has already won. He has already won this tariff war already. Even if he's able to get the tariffs at a base of 10%, he's already won the war. Because there's no American president after Donald Trump, whether a Republican or a Democrat, that is going to come in and see trade the same anymore in this country. Donald Trump has already won on this issue because any subsequent president after Donald Trump will never come back to the old ways of doing business when it comes to US trading anymore. Those old days are gone. And that is gone because of Donald J. Trump. So that is why I say Donald Trump has already won this battle. Whether he succeeds or fails in terms of implementing the 50% or 30% or whatever percentage that he has on these countries, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, people say, oh, yes, he imposed tariffs on almost every country, including even penguins on an island somewhere in Australia. But at the end of the day, what these tariffs are targeting is mainly about 10 countries with the European Union and the United Kingdom. That's all it is. Most of the rest of the world, I think, will end up getting the 10 base percentage, tariff percentage. That's how it's going to be. But the main targets are China, India, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Canada, and then what do you call Indonesia? That's about it. Those are the main corporates, and Vietnam. The main corporate are these key countries who are pretty much have a higher trade deficit with the United States of America because they do a lot of trading. They export a lot of their goods into the United States markets. And that is why, I mean, looking at the whole thing that is going on, it's not pretty much the whole world. But at the end of the day, Trump has to flood the zone. He has to. Because, look, right after the NAFTA deal that passed, going back 1994, when Bill Clinton signed that into law, what that NAFTA deal did to American workers is what has made Trump gotten a lot of support from these Midwestern Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and so on and so forth. Because what NAFTA did was that most of these companies, Ford, Chrysler, which is now Stellantis, and General Motors, and all these appliance companies, all these manufacturing industries in America. With NAFTA in, they decided to move these factories from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Indiana, all these Rust Belt states, set up shop in Mexico or Canada, and then eventually even some of them moved their shops to China. And then what they do is they manufacture these products down there and then bring them back to the United States and sell them to the American consumer. Pretty much disseminating all these industrial states. These were highly paid, good jobs. That pretty much most of these people in these areas, you had grandfather working there, father working there, son working there, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, you go to all these areas, most of these industrial belt states, all these factories are gone. Just talking about the world order has changed in terms of manufacturing. Yes, it's true, it has changed. Because a lot of pundits come on TV and they make this argument about, oh, even when the factories are coming back, it's not going to be the same. Yes, it's true, it's not going to be the same. But at the end of the day also, whatever the factories that are going to be coming back is also still going to help these local industries in America. And that is what Trump has tapped into. And that's what Trump is doing. Because you hear people talk about how bad these tariffs is doing to American economy and all that stuff and so on and so forth. But they forget to tell you that all these countries that have had higher tariffs on America, somehow, if it was that bad, if imposing tariffs on your trading partners was that bad, how come that these countries still have these higher tariffs on American goods? How come that China, India, and the European Union, Mexico, Canada, all of these countries still have higher tariffs on American products if tariffs is bad? At the end of the day, they must be working there. And you hear people talking about, especially pundits on TV, talking about, oh, this thing is going to hurt America in the long run. It's going to build up China, and Europe is going to move towards China. Look, the European Union knows better than that. European Union is not moving no closer to China. China is a dictatorship. Let's be real here. China is a dictatorship. And at the end of the day, there is no way European Union is going to align with China. Align with China against what? Against Russia? Or align with China and with Russia? I mean, let's be real here. It ain't going to happen. The European Union knows better than that. That is why all these countries are negotiating with Donald Trump on these tariffs. At the end of the day, if what Donald Trump is doing in terms of the tariffs is harming America around the world, why are these countries coming to negotiate them? Because it doesn't make sense. If I'm China or Europe or Canada or Mexico, and what Trump is doing is hurting America, then I should be sitting back and let Trump destroy America so I get the benefit of it. So I get to enjoy the benefit that I'm going to reap out of what Trump is doing. But they are not doing that. They are not doing that. They are negotiating because they know what Trump is doing is hurting them more than hurting America. At the end of the day, when everything settles down, like I said earlier, it's not going to be this massive tax tariffs increases that Trump have imposed on some of these countries. That's why I had a 90-day pause, which was a very sensible thing for him to do in the first place, because this 90-day pause gives these countries the opportunity to negotiate, because you couldn't have a blanket tariff and say that it's taking effect right immediately without giving people the opportunity to talk to you about it. So it was a very sensible thing for Trump to do, to have this 90-day pause. So these people will come in, countries will come in, and then they will negotiate on these deals and how much they can allow American goods into their market and what and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, that is what is going to happen. Deals are going to be cut out, and in the end, American citizens are also going to benefit, just like European citizens, Canadian citizens, Mexicans, and if the Chinese also decide to come on board, they're also going to benefit in the end. Because at the end of the day, China is an export-driven economy. China is an export-driven economy. China exports about 60, 70, almost 20% to the United States alone. I mean, last year alone, China exported about $500 billion worth of goods to the United States. And I hear people, some pundits talking about, oh, China now Xi Jinping moving to Asia and talking to Asian leaders, and he's going to set deals and so on. Hold on. I mean, Asia countries have $500 billion to spend on Chinese goods. I mean, let's be real here. I mean, does African countries have $500 billion to spend on Chinese goods? Heck no, they don't. So the reality is the reality. At the end of the day, where the money is, that's where you send your goods to. And the money is in the United States of America. That is why every country on this planet, most of these countries around the world, bring their goods here because this is where the money is. America has become the world's buying capital. I mean, they buy every country's products. And they bring the products here and they sell them quick. That is why they all come here. So at the end of the day, they're looking at all of these things and don't know, yes, I mean, if we lose American market, that's going to be a big, big blow to the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy is already in shambles right now. It's been in shambles for some time now. You cannot tell what is going on in China right now, but there's a lot of problem in China's economy right now. The country is pretty much in recession, but you're not going to know about it because at the end of the day, it's a dictatorship. It's a communist dictatorship country. So you're not going to hear what is going on. But the truth of the matter is the Chinese are feeling the pain. I mean, just quite recently, reports that came out of factories shutting down because most of these factories in China are operating because of the United States market. And how did China become what China is today? It goes back to 2001 when same American crony capitalists and politicians allowed China to join the WTO. And in the end, China took advantage of being a member of WTO to use it to its own advantage. And I don't want anybody to blame China. Like Donald Trump said in one of his interviews, he respects the hell out of any country that is using what they can get to take advantage of the United States. And like the old saying by Joseph Stalin, don't hate the player, hate the game. So if China, being a member of WTO, is using that to advance Chinese interest, hey, so that's good for China. It is up to the United States and the rest of the world to make the decision of whether they're going to allow somebody to treat them that way. And China knows it. They've taken advantage of the US and the rest of the world. I mean, as a matter of fact, looking at this whole thing about China and the US and the rest of the world, it's not even just the US that China have been ripping off in terms of trading deals and so on and so forth. If you look at what China has done to the rest of the world, China has pretty much disseminated most countries around the world, especially African countries. I mean, look at your various African countries yourselves. How many manufacturing industries do you even have in your countries? You don't have that many. Almost everything you have in your country today is imported from China. Even toothpicks with all that wood in Africa, we cannot even manufacture toothpicks in Africa. Matches, lighters, we cannot even manufacture that in Africa now. We have to import all of that stuff from China. So at the end of the day, you look at African countries' economies, that used to be some manufacturing and industries and so on. So now look at them. Everything that we consume on that continent is being imported from China. So what Donald Trump pretty much has done is to wake the rest of the world up. He's woken the rest of the world up to look at themselves and look at their trading deals with other various countries and reassess them and make decisions that will benefit your various African countries and your citizens. Because at the end of the day, that is what Donald J. Trump is doing. Trump is doing what he has to do to benefit the American worker. Whether you like the way he's doing it or you don't like the way he's doing it, at the end of the day, what he's trying to do is to make sure that it benefits America. But don't blame China. That is why I have a problem when I hear people talk about, oh, China, this, China. No, China didn't do anything wrong. China just took advantage of a system that is broken and used it to benefit China. And that is what every country should do. If you have a deal with your opponent and if they're going to give you the opportunity to rip them off, then go ahead and rip them off. And it was out of these corporate greedy oligarchs, American companies, that American citizens have to be angry at. American citizens have to be angry at these corporate greedy executives and American companies because they are the ones who pretty much, due to cheap labor in Mexico, in China, in Vietnam, and other places, decided to move factories out of the United States, outsource these jobs to these countries, and then bring them back and sell it to the American consumer. Basically, disseminating all the manufacturing industries in the United States of America. Now making America only a service industry economy. And you cannot be a service industry economy and thrive in this modern era. You got to be more than that. I mean, modern day manufacturing is more like technological manufacturing. So basically, it doesn't even just create manufacturing in terms of the workroom floor manufacturing anymore. It also helps in terms of IT development and IT jobs in that field as well. Because any technological manufacturing that you have now, you also need some IT technicians to be there to work on these computers and all that stuff that are going to be working in these factories. So the world has changed. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, it was the corporate greedy executives of American companies. They created this problem. They were the ones who created this problem. And they are the same people now today have become the mouthpieces of all these news networks, coming on news networks, talking about how bad what Trump is doing is affecting the economy and this and that. And, you know, and they have a solution. More or less, they have a solution to the problem that they created. And you want us to trust these people? No. These are the very people who created the problem that Trump is trying to solve. And now they come on these networks talking about what Trump is doing is chaos and he's destroying this and he's doing that and he's doing that. And thank God, Trump is not listening to them. I mean, just last week, talking a couple of weeks ago, when the stock market was down, pretty much down all week. And they were happy because at the end of the day, I know that was an artificial thing that was done by the stock market. I mean, just to force Trump's hand. That is what they did. But at the end of the day, they also realized that Donald Trump really doesn't care. And because Donald Trump doesn't really care also, he is not going to be just watching the stock market as low. Look, even though I get it, when the bonds went down with the treasury bills and stuff, yeah, that's when he came out with the pause and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, he is at a position where right now, he doesn't have to give a damn about what the stock market, what stock market right now is pretty much of a game by these oligarchs and these crony capitalists. Because at the end of the day, this is where they have made a lot of money. When these factory jobs, manufacturing industry moved from America to Southeast Asia, China, Mexico, and other parts of the world, about 50 to 60% of Americans, those who invested in the stock market, I mean, talk about the wealthy people who are already in the stock market. If you invested, you made a lot of money. So if you're looking at in terms of the world that was built with these outsourcing jobs, factories, because at the end of the day, most of these companies were building these jobs outside, cheap labor, so they were bringing in a lot of profit, you know, so they were able to pass on dividends to their stock shareholders and all that stuff. So if you invested in the stock market, I did, you made a lot of money. You made a lot of money. There's a lot of money that was made and it's still being made. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day also, these are the people who are now saying that what Trump is doing is bad because they are looking at the bottom, at their bottom line. And they have realized that, look, yes, if they move these jobs back to the United States, they have to increase wages. Because you have to increase wages in America. Yes, of course you have to, because that is part of building America. I mean, you're not going to bring these jobs back and still think that you're going to have Americans work as a cheap labor, like, you know, like slave labor, like you're doing in China and other places. No, you have to increase wages. I mean, if you go back, let's say 50, 60 years, and you look at American CEO and the bottom person of a company, how much the pay difference was. It's become like a gazillion difference right now. It used to be about maybe 20% or 10 to 20% in the 80s. But today you have a CEO who makes about $50 million And the bottom person in that company makes about $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. I mean, just look at it. So these guys don't want to go back to those days where they have to take a pay cut so they can also pay their employees better living wage. They don't want to do that. So that's why they are staunchly against Donald Trump. But if you look at Donald Trump also, fellows, Donald Trump is not an ideologue. That is one thing I like about Donald Trump. I've been following American politics for quite some time now. What I hate are the ideologues. Because the ideologues are the ones who will never bend. I mean, they will never bend. And you have them in both parties. You have them in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Well, everything is based on their ideology. That is why I'm saying that Donald Trump could never have passed this bill, any bill in Congress, to have him do this time if he hadn't gone this route. Because these ideologues who believe that free trade is good for America because at the end of the day, they are corporate sponsors, lobbyists, who contribute to their campaigns, are going to convince them not to support a bill like that. They will go with their lobbyists. They don't really care about the American worker. And most of these Republican congressmen and senators, that's who they are. See, so when you hear Trump talk about the swamp, he doesn't only refer to the Democrats. He's both Democrats and Republicans. Both of them are that's the swamp he keeps talking about. Because both of them are in the pockets of these lobbyists and these corporate executives. You know, because they contribute to both parties. So that is why Trump is flooding the zone, to use a sports metaphor, flooding the zone with all these things so that he has to do that. That's the only way. And so far, he's been able to do it, and it's working. And it's working right now. So it doesn't have the swamp. I mean, the swamp have done everything possible trying to stop him, but they haven't been able to stop him, and they can't stop him now. He's already out of the gate. He's already out of the gate. And like I said, he's already established the groundwork right now. So even if Trump should leave office in 4 years, or a Democrat or a Republican should come in, there's no way they're going to go back to the old trade deals that America had with the rest of the world. Trump had already upended the World Trade Economic Order. And what Trump has done right now, you might not see the benefit in 4 years or 3 years now, but guess what? It's going to end up benefiting American workers in the near future. It will definitely benefit American workers in the near future because what he has done. Now, American companies are looking at even on the national security level with regards to what is going on with China in terms of rare earth minerals that Chinese have also decided they are not going to export rare minerals to some American technology companies. That alone has also woken American companies up. I mean, American companies had already started, moving out of China. I mean, going back about 5-6 years now. But what is happening right now, they're moving to other Southeastern Asia countries like Vietnam and India. And that's the mistake American companies will always keep doing. I think the best place they should move to, because the most loyal people that you can have on this planet Earth are the African people. The only thing Africans have to do is get their infrastructure straight. In terms of power, roads, and everything, logistics, everything straight. If Africans are able to put that thing in order and get it straight, Africa is the best because they are the most loyal people for American companies. Because in 100 years, Africans are not going to be building their country to come and fight America. Unlike these Southeast Asian countries like China and India, because their goal is to dominate. So if the American companies are going to learn something from this, they should not go to Southeast Asia, just invest in Africa. Because I think Africans are more loyal, and that one, they can count on the Africans to stand with them. You know. So fellas, I mean, this is my take on this whole issue in regards to Donald Trump and the tariffs and what is going on around the world and stuff. And I get it. I know there are people who are going to say, oh, are you supporting Donald Trump with this tariffs? Look, I'm talking based on how I see it in terms of how this thing will end up in the long run to benefit the American citizen. And based on everything that I've said and based on what I've seen and read, I think it's a good thing. Maybe we don't like the way Donald Trump has been doing this, in terms of the way he's started these tariffs in countries, but at the end of the day, also, like I stated earlier, that is how Trump has to do it. Those calling on Trump should have gone to Congress and allow the Congress to help work with him and all that. Look, fellas, I mean, those people talking all that talk, they don't really understand the political system and how the Congress works. Because there's no way, like I said, like Ross Perot himself said in that debate, these lobbyists are never going to allow their congressmen, the congressmen and the senators to work with Trump to impose tariffs on their companies. I mean, to eat into their margins, their profit margins, and so on. It's not going to happen. Trump will never have succeeded if he had used the Congress. It will never have happened. And he knew that. And Trump doesn't have that much time. All you guys want 3 years more. And he knows that. So he has to flood the zone. That's what he's doing. So I don't blame Trump for doing it. I mean, the man thrives in chaos. And he enjoys it. And he's doing the right thing in terms of how to make sure these things work. And it's going to work. And in the long run, the American citizens are going to be the beneficiaries of what Donald Trump have done this year, 2025. You might not see it in a couple of years, but in the long run, there are some companies that are going to move back here. Americans are going to look at a lot of in terms of national security, because at the end of the day, if you're an American company and you're not looking at the national security of this country, and you've been making a lot of money in this country, then you got to rethink about how you look at things. Because in the long run, these Chinese companies, what the Chinese have been doing, and that's how they lure the American companies into the game anyway. Because when Chinese opened up and was enticed and joined the WTO, what they did pretty much was they enticed all these Western companies, American companies in particular. So American companies come to China, invest in China, set up shop in China, and then the Chinese will have to have a stake in that company. And then American companies introduce their technology, teach them on these technologies, and so on and so forth. And in the end, you find another Chinese company fully owned by the Chinese government with some quasi-government and private ownership, do the same thing that the American company is doing there. And then in the end, what do? They put a rag under their American or the Western company. And now they have the Chinese company, they do pretty much everything same, and then they get the market. And American companies have come to realize that for some time now. A key example is BYD, the electric vehicle company. When Tesla, they invited Tesla, they didn't give Tesla a hard time because they knew what they wanted. Tesla came in there, set up shop there, set up factory there. They have these communist leaders, some of them on the board in China, Tesla, and all that stuff. And then they built another Chinese company that learned the technology from Tesla. And now, for the past 5 years now, look at, ever since they came in operation, what has BYD been doing? Be chipping away Tesla market. Now they are the #1 EV market in China now. And this is how the Chinese have been operating for years. And some of these American companies have come to see this picture. So they are, even though you might think they are doing this, in terms of the business opportunity by these foreign companies, Western companies, but in the end, they pull the rug underneath them, and then they have to leave China. And this is how it's been going on for some years now. So these companies should even use this opportunity to realize that what Donald Trump is doing is trying to save them and help the American economy and the rest of the Western world. Even including the other countries. Everybody have to now look at China and all their trading deals with other countries. And if they have to renegotiate, they also have to renegotiate, because everybody has the right to do that. If somebody is telling you, I'm bringing this to your country for 10%, and you cannot charge them 10% also, then that is your business. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is saying that reciprocal tariffs. You charge me 10%, I charge you 10%. If you don't want to trade with me, take your business somewhere else. It's that simple. All right, fellas, I'm going to come up maybe next week with another one, mainly specifically about how this Trump New World Economic Order should be an opportunity for African countries to convince American companies to come and invest in Africa. So if it's Sunday, it's the Africa Weekly Talk. God bless you guys and have a great week. Peace and love.